Hello everybody and welcome back to Chapter Tactics, where we talk about tactics and strategies for both new and veteran players alike. I am your host, Magikarp Usefly, and with me today we have the wonderful John P.
Hey, what's up everyone?
And we've also got the one, the only, Skari. I pressed the wrong button. Skari!
Hello, representing the old in the room.
Yeah. Well, you're not that old. You're like...
I'm a Grognar.
Yeah, you're
I'm officially a Grognar now.
Yeah. So today we're talking about downplaying overpowered armies, and we're saying to do this as a way to play against your friends. I know that usually we stick with like more competitive stuff, and we will tie that in at the end of this episode. But the point of this is to kind of like talk about, you know, there is obviously codex creep right now with the latest armies that are out. We're talking about Tau, Custodes, Eldar, Harlequins, and upcoming Tyranids, right? And so sometimes you're going to be playing like these strong armies into armies that aren't very strong, like your Space Marines or like your Necrons or something like that, right? And during that time, it might feel bad for your friends and stuff like that. So this episode is mostly talking about how to still play your overpowered armies or like your strong armies, but you know, at the end, still having friends to play with at the end, right? Like that's the main goal here, is to not shoo away your friends with how strong your armies are. But that's basically the topic that we're talking about. And then Skari is also going to talk about ways that you can use these different ways that you are kind of downplaying your armies to make yourself a better player in future events.
Just have to, you know, get zen with it. And I will say, though, this entire show is brought to you by...
Oh, it's brought to you by FrontlineGaming.org, where you can get amazing game mats for not just your 40K games, but almost any tabletop game out there. Purchase miniatures at a discount and join some of the largest 40K events in the industry. They also have great podcasting, or great podcasts such as Chapter Tactics, which you're listening to right now, Signals from the Frontline, Thursday Show with Adam Camilleri, and there's also a new episode of 40K Game Changers with Brad Chester. And they're like going over 40K and basically like Brad's entire life. So it's actually really cool. Go check that out. Tickets for Cruise Hammer is up as well, so go get that. Tickets for BAO is also up if you haven't gotten that already. San Diego Open is GW. And then I think that LSO as well, also available. Go get your events, guys. It's happening. It's crazy.
It's going to be another season of the ITC. I'm really, really excited to see how this season shapes up competitively. However, in between competitive games, you're going to be playing with your friends, your buddies. Not everybody goes to all these events, and you might just be hanging out like in the garage, playing some games every weekend or, you know, every other week or whatever it is that you and your friends get together to play games. And the internet can be quite... overwhelming at times. I know people who actively avoid the internet discourse so they don't get discouraged about collecting the miniatures that they love.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of that as of right now. It's very, very, one could say salty, I guess. Like there's a lot of salty people out there against armies. Some of it is rightfully so, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. Some of it is kind of not cool. Like some of it is a little bit too egregious or sensationalist, I guess.
Yeah, it does come to the hot take sort of like society that we kind of live in nowadays, where you sort of have to follow that rabbit down the hole. However, it's not all doom and gloom, okay? Like even if you're playing a crazy competitive book or, quote, highly efficient book, there are ways that you can definitely make it a more enjoyable experience for you when you want to have friends and your friends.
Yeah, and like, you know what's also very interesting? All three of us own armies that are that were strong or are currently strong, and you know, we've kind of felt like you know, the backhand of the community and like, you know, what they want versus what we're enjoying out of our armies. Like John P, you had AdMech, right? How was it playing like with AdMech when they were like incredibly strong, according to the community?
Yeah, I remember I was playing against other people and I was like, all right, I get this many shots and I ignore your cover, I get +1, I reroll all this, and it's like 60 of them. So here we go. And they just watch me shoot them down, and then I'd be like, all right, this unit now all the wounds you on 4s, and here we go.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it it was it was if I was like playing against like a CPU or something, it would have been pretty fun. But playing against an actual human being, I was like that like I can actually see the reaction of. I was like, oh god, I'm sorry, man. But
Yeah.
this is what I'm working with.
Yeah, yeah. And what's really interesting is that when AdMech first came out, right? Compared to what it is now, a lot of people when fighting them now, it's like a lot of, oh, you get this and this and this and this. That is ridiculous that you get all this. But then like you usually win through points anyways against AdMech sometimes, just because, you know, it's hard for them to stay on points.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like they got a pretty big nerf. They're still pretty good. It's just that it takes a lot of mental prowess to go through that. But how did playing AdMech during that time feel for you? Like, did you feel bad playing that army, and did you feel like you shouldn't be playing that army against people?
Yeah, I remember I played probably like 3 or 4 games out of league, playing as Admech. I remember when I told the TO that I was playing Admech, he gave me like one of those uh emotes. There was like, oh darn you,
Oh,
you you
yeah,
Admech player. And then like when I was setting up my games, like, oh, you're playing the boogeyman, huh? You get comments like those, but like you
yeah,
show up, you play, you have a good time, and people are just like, yeah, that was pretty strong.
yeah, yeah. It's
And
it's
you
hard to
kind
avoid it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of just have to laugh and be like, yeah, definitely pretty strong.
Sorry, man. I don't.
Here's my Rust Stalkers, by the way. I can also fight you in melee, ignoring everything, all the bad things.
Yeah, rest in peace. Oh, not Ruststalkers. The Balstari, right? That's the chicken
Chicken
walker.
walkers.
Chicken
Yeah,
walkers, yeah,
rest in
chicken walkers.
peace.
Yeah, Rust Stalkers are
They got
still
hit hard, man.
yeah,
Yeah,
Rust Stalkers are still in a good spot. They're
yeah.
19
Ruststalkers are
points, not
great.
too bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then what about you, Skari? Being the Drukhari player, you faced adversity as a Drukhari player. I can only imagine. What was that like?
I played Black Templars.
Yeah.
Um, that was my solution. Like I did play the Drukhari, especially if we were going to or playing like a competitive event. I took my Dark Eldar. If I was I was trying to go and place or podium at a tournament. My Dark Eldar were the ones that came out to play. I always made sure that I ran my own version of the Dark Eldar because I've been playing them for such a long time. I didn't just want to copycat and like what was the most efficient. So what I found as a faction expert for Dark Eldar specifically, that I could take all of the units that were terrible in the book and use them in conjunction with some of the good units. And I got to practice and play with a lot of the stuff that nobody else was playing with. So I got to use like beast packs and like the Beastmaster and like, just units that you didn't really see very often and still had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, definitely. And then as for me, I own Harlequins. We don't have to go much into that just because, if you're keeping up with the meta, you can obviously tell where they're at as of right now. But, even though these armies were strong or are strong, there's still ways that you can make the army, kind of like hit softer against your friends in order to keep your friends and make sure that they keep playing with you. And I think that that's like the first thing that we should break down here. And that's just coming up with like making the list. Do you guys have a lot of experience with building an army that like punches lower than they should expectedly do, right?
Yes, oh yes. I think one of the biggest things you can look at if you want to punch less is just look at it less efficiently. I think it's one of the biggest things to do.
Yep.
I think that's because when you're playing for competitive match play games, you're going to be building a list that is fine-tuned to get as many points as possible with as few resources as possible, right? Or doesn't get hit so hard when your opponent kills or takes away pieces from your force. So you're running like specific units to do very specific jobs, and at a sort of squad cap, like 6 mandrakes or 6 dire avengers, so that you can do actions,
Yeah,
and you can
yeah.
like get those points, and you're not giving the sergeant upgrades because you need to keep him cheap, because if you take that 3 or 4 times, that's the same amount of points as getting a 4th squad in instead of giving a power sword to everyone.
Yeah.
So I think one of the first things you can do is make your list less efficient by taking upgrades, taking full squads, like just making it more bloated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Like, some armies don't have the luxury of doing that, right? But some armies do, and so doing things that people normally wouldn't do, like instead of taking, let's say, when you're playing Crusher Stampede, instead of taking a Dema or something, you could just put in an Exocrine. Like, it's not as good, but it's still fun, and people aren't going to get as angry at you, right? And it's just like making those choices of not using those very, very efficient units that you see everywhere, and I think that that's like the best thing that you can do. What about you, John P? What do you think?
Yeah, I think with some of these codexes, it's very obvious that maybe 1 or 2 faction traits are going to be super strong. Like, for example, with AdMech, like people were playing Mars, Lucius, and some Metallica spiced in there, but you never see stuff like Riza or Graya or
Yeah.
I don't even Styges. So maybe you could consider playing some of those other lesser efficient armies that have some fun niches. Maybe you like it because of lore. Maybe you like it because they have like one very cool thing that you want to do. So I think that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, like
That's a
just
very good point. Very
mhm.
good point. I did that all the time. I went through all of the weird cabals and like witch cults and so, because everybody was running Strife and Dark Technomancer and Cabal of Blackheart, and that was like the only thing everyone ran, and so I didn't run any of those.
Yeah. Just like going with just different playstyles. Like if you're playing Grey Knights, going with like what Blades of Victory for re-rolling your charge roll every once in a while, or just taking just other stuff that people aren't going to see. Like if you're taking Crusher Stampede instead of taking Leviathan, you could take something like Hydra. Like that's fun. You could do Kraken, you could do Chronos. You don't have to always be playing the things that are the most efficient. However, we do come across, or we do run into this problem of what do you do when, even when you kind of like nerf your own army, how do you deal with other armies that still can't compete with the nerfed version of what you're doing? You know what I mean?
I think that you have to have a conversation with the opponent as to what the aim of the game is, right? And I think that's the most important thing, because one of the things you want to do, if your opponent wants to play a match play mission, and they're not as experienced as you, for example, or they're playing a less optimized army, you could make it more of a challenge for yourself by, number one, toning down your list by bloating it up or taking less efficient choices. But B, like you could become sort of like a coach to your opponent and sort of like be an open book, play like a poker hand with all your cards out, and just tell them exactly what's going to happen as it's happening, to kind of make sure that they make the most optimal choices throughout the course of that entire game as well.
What about you, John P? Do you have any suggestions on that one?
I mean, I like what Skari said. Like play like an open book, kind of just like guide them through. It's like going through a tutorial and like the first stage of like an RPG or just any kind of game, where they're like, all right, get ready.
It's a fine line, though.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be like telling them what to do, because you don't want to come across as like rude or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, kind of explaining, this is what I'm setting up to do, or like I'm going to use these stratagems in succession next turn. Like this is my plan, and then giving them an opportunity to sort of foil your plan by making a plan of their own, sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like presenting them with like a multiple choice question. Like, the answers are there. They just have to figure it out which one, rather than just like leaving them out in the dark, or just giving them like, yeah, do this. Although, because
Yeah.
they're not just gonna learn if you just tell them what to do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, how do you guys deal with that if they choose like the wrong decision? Do you try to coax? Do you try to like push them towards the better decision that's gonna be better for them, or do you just let them do it?
I feel like you have to let the person who's playing the game play the game. You know what I mean? Like, first and foremost, like you can't just be like, "No, that's the wrong choice,"
Yeah.
because like you don't want to come across
Oh, yeah.
as a jerk.
Yeah, yeah.
You know
No,
what I mean?
I'm
But,
not
like,
saying that. I'm saying like if you were to say something like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" and then like
yeah,
reiterate.
it'd be like,
Yeah.
be like, so like for example, it really depends on the relationship you have with the person you're playing with, if that makes sense. Like it's not a cut and dry answer.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you can be meeting someone for the first time at your local game store where you're having a pickup match play game, and most people play match play because it's sort of like the well-known version of the game that everybody has most contact with. So it's like that expectation is. So if you went that, you could say something like, "Don't forget that I can do this,"
Yeah.
or something like that. Like, I can do this next turn.
Yeah,
And then they'd
something
be
like
like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Don't forget that I can heroic 6 inches." Like
exactly.
you
Yeah.
might not want to get so. You don't tell them don't get so close. Be like, "Oh, don't forget that this guy right here can heroic 6 inches." And if they still want to get up nice and close, well, that's their choice at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like leaving them like just a friendly reminder here and there. You don't want to cross that line and be like overbearing and start to backseat them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like recently me and John P were playing a game and it was like Blood Angels versus Harlequins and we kept telling each other, "Hey, don't forget that this thing can do a 6-inch heroic intervention. This thing can do this. This one, I'm going to fight on death." Stuff like that. Like just like prepping your opponent to understand what's going to happen, but not like forcing them to make that decision, but just giving them the option that it's there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like if you do this, I can do this.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing to remember is, a lot of times there's a lot of resistance when people play a very powerful faction because they feel that they didn't have agency in what happened at all. Like you just felt like there was no way that you could have changed the outcome no matter what you did. And that leads to feel bad moments, right? When you're playing the game and at the end of it you go, I don't see any way that I could have changed the outcome of that game. And that can be very frustrating for people.
Yeah.
So I think A, it's important to have that open book, but B, as a player of like Tau, for example, Tau have a crazy amount of overlapping rules that sort of like all overlap to create like some monstrous like shooting phases. If you're playing against someone who hasn't played against Tau very often or you don't want to leave that feel bad. Even if you're playing a toned down list, take the time to explain like an order of operations. Because a lot of times we expect the person who we're playing against to understand the lingo, especially in like a competitive event. If you're like top table or whatnot, you're going through like terms and lingos and order of operations, and your opponent's just kind of nodding along because they understand what you're doing as you're doing it. But like not everyone is following that very, very quickly. And sometimes you just need to slow down and be like, okay, this guy has a warlord trait that does this, and he's going to do it on this guy. And then they register that information, and then you can go to the next thing, right? And then once you've kind of go, okay, so now that I've got all that, okay, this unit deletes that unit, But it like gives people like a path of like a programming path of how that happened.
Yeah, definitely.
The flow.
Yeah, and it for people that like play regularly on like something like streams or whatnot, it actually helps out a lot because you always have to like describe to your audience like what you're doing, why you're doing this, how you're getting these buffs and everything like that. So it actually helps out a lot by just vocally speaking about what you're doing and how you're getting things, and not just being like, this guy's gonna shoot here, I get to reroll because of this. Like, like doing that really fast. You could say, he's going to get this. I'm going to give him this ability. He's going to be able to reroll this and this and this. And then I'm going to do this and this, like just kind of like laying it out like bullet point by bullet point, because you have to do that already. So just like actively talking about what you're doing actually helps you out a lot. later on.
And your opponent too.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like it helps them out too. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people like to do like hiding or like not a lot, but some people like to, kind of hide information for the gotcha moments, right? But like that doesn't make you a better player. That just makes you kind of like mean. Like it doesn't really do anything. It's like beating up on somebody that's like bronze tier in League of Legends and you're like diamond. Like you're not gaining anything off of that interaction at all. Yeah. So what do you guys do then in terms of like things like decision making when it comes to the game? Do you try to do things that are more wild and more eccentric than you normally do? Like how do you go about that process?
I guess for me, it depends on what kind of game the other person wants. Like if they're actually trying to get better, like strategically, then maybe I'll play the mission more, but like just a little ease up on it. But if they're just like here to have fun, then maybe I'll just ignore the objective, go try to snipe their character or something, or go for a wild 12-inch charge that I just don't need to go for.
12-inch charges are always good. It doesn't matter if it's competitive or not. Just throw out a 12-inch charge every once in a while. It lightens up the mood. It doesn't matter.
If it happens, especially, like everybody's cheering for that to happen.
Yeah.
And then it's like, facepalm moments, be like, I can't believe that happened. To be honest, I think John B. had said it perfectly. It's depending on what your opponent wants to play. If they're like, you know what, I need to practice, so please play like a tight game. Okay, play a tight game. But a lot of the times, if it's something like I'm playing my Drukhari and I'm playing against my friend Tyler, and he's got his like whatever he was playing at the time. Oh yeah, it was like Raven Guard or whatever. He's playing like his Space Marine Raven Guard at the height of Drukhari power. First and foremost, I'm probably not going to play 2,000 points. I'm going to play like 1,500 points. Mm-hmm. Because, it gets kind of crazy when you play bigger games. Secondly, I'm probably not even playing match play. I'm playing like Tempest of War, which are the new cards, which are fantastic.
Oh my goodness, yes.
They're so good. They're so good.
Yeah.
Open war cards or whatever, which happened before Tempest, or Maelstrom, or something that's just not the cut and dry, I've built my list to be super efficient type of mission. Because, when you play match play, it gives you opportunity to build that list within the framework to be very efficient at what you want it to do. So I'm trying to like take all that away. And then last but not least, I'll do stuff like, let's put everything on the line and YOLO, and just see what happens, and it's like, normally I'd be very conservative with this unit, and I wouldn't commit this unit till turn 3, but I've got the Animus Vitae, and I've got a bunch of Hellions, and I'm going to run my Archon up, throw the grenade, advance and charge all these Hellions, and they're probably going to die by turn 2. And I'm used to having them not die by turn 2, so let's see what I can do after that. So I'll use it for like practicing wacky, like gung-ho scenarios in like little localized pockets within the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Another game that me and John, it's the same game that me and John P played, but like it was a lot of fun because I took the Yin Karn in an auxiliary detachment, so I forgoed my Strands of Fate, I forgoed Luck of the Laughing God. I played the Dark Sadist so I can fight on death, so I don't lose like too much value off of my troops dying. And I was just like, I'm not gonna take my invuln save. I'm just gonna let my unit die. I don't care. And then just pop up the Incarn. And like that helped me learn things like trying to figure out like where to place him and stuff like that. And that made the game so much more fun for just like both of us, because I'm just like, I'm gonna put him here. Oh, now the Incarn's over here. Now it's over here. And you when you make these bad decisions, right? It seems like it's like you're throwing away the game and you're not getting like much information out of it, but every game you can get information out of the game. It just depends on where you're looking and what you want out of that game, right? And I think that's mostly what we're talking about, is just like getting the information and finding the information that you need out of these practice games, even though they're like quote unquote not competitive, right?
Yeah, so you basically cover both your bases. You get your need as a competitive player to sort of like continuously improve and learn and get better at the game and be more efficient. But doing that with a very inefficient like series of units and combinations of units that's not the most efficient, but you're still trying to be the most efficient with the mechanics that you've built into this non-efficient list, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So you touched on what is it? Tempest of War, Schemes of War. I forgot what it's called. Is it Tempest of War?
Tempest of War. Yeah.
Tempest of War. Okay. So you talked about that, and I think that's actually a huge problem that 40K did have in 9th edition when it first started, because in 8th edition we had Maelstrom of War, 9th edition started, and Maelstrom of War was gone at that point, right? And because of that, the only ways that people had to play match play was through the GT mission pack, and we didn't have like a casual match play mode. It was always the GT mission pack. You can play open war, but then when you play open war, then you can bring like 5 of one unit and it doesn't matter, right? And then like the maps are a little bit different. You could probably do some homebrew games of like trying to come up with different rules for match play and stuff like that, or combining match play with open war, because you're doing Garage Hammer, so it doesn't really matter. But I think that the Tempest of War coming out now, it should have come out like a year ago, because it's so much fun playing Tempest of War. Yeah. Skari, do you want to actually go over how to play Tempest of War for people that don't know about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So anybody who doesn't know, Games Workshop just released it's a deck of cards. It's like an oversized deck of cards called Tempest of War. It has 2 decks. You have one series of cards for you and one for your opponent. It's 20 cards. Now, if you play match play, you'll be familiar with a lot of the stuff in this deck. But the way that you play it is a little different. So you draw a random deployment, which doesn't vary too much from any of the deployments that you normally play. I think there's like one weird one. Then you draw a mission card, which will essentially be one of the match play missions that you normally get to play. Either hold 1, hold 2, hold more, or something else. And there's 5 objectives on the table, and you take turns putting 5 objectives down on the table, 1 in each deployment zone, and then 3 in no man's land. And then you take 1 mission special rule, and you apply that. So in a lot of match play missions, there is a mission special rule, like you don't get your CP if your commander's dead, or you have to hold your objective to get your CP, or there's no forward deploy, like no forward or forward deploying or whatever. There's a variety of different ones in there. And then they're not as crazy as some of the open war ones, which are like game breaking crazy.
Yeah, okay? like some of them can be really bad. There's some really bad ones out there. Yeah.
Like terrible. To the point where, you kind of have to be able to veto some of them sometimes.
Yeah.
But so then once you've laid that out, you each get. So at the start of your command phase, you have, what your primary mission is, which is essentially hold objectives like normal, and you can score a max of 45 points, like old school match play, 5 for everything you can do. And then the person going second usually scores it at the end of their last turn, the same as with match play. And then you draw 3 secondary cards from this secondary deck. And each one that you complete is worth 5 points, and you cash them in at the end of your turn normally, or whenever it says that you can do it.
Yeah.
But they're all the secondaries from the match play book, except instead of having to do it the same secondary over and over again, you get to try and do a variety of different secondaries throughout the course of the whole game, and you have to do it once, score it, and then you try and do something else. And you only need to score 7 cards to max out your 45 primary points. And you can redraw, you can get rid of your cards, so it becomes like a really fun, and it's a very balanced game because it can swing one way or another. You can score 3 of your cards when your opponent doesn't that turn, and it just makes it very engaging because you're trying to do a lot of little things throughout the whole course of the whole game, but it's still within that match play framework, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's like the biggest reason as to why it's so good, is because like I said before, we didn't have this casual match play ruling, right? And that's casual match play makes it so that people can still practice their armies, but also not feel bad and have a good time still. Again, when me and John P played, we were playing what is it, Tempest of War, and it's the whole. You put one objective marker in your deployment zone, and we're just like, you know what? What if we put the objective markers in our deployment zone because it was Dawn of War, and then we put it in no man's land, separating them 9 inches apart, but we just put it all on one side of the board, and then like we just like home ruled to just put our armies on the other side of the board, still Dawn of War deployment, and like it was just so much fun. Like I can't get over how fun Tempest of War is. John P. What did you think about Tempest of War?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, the way we set it up too is just like we had pretty much all of our army on just one side of the field, just ready. Everyone was just ready to go. And counter charge. It was pretty much just a big slobber knocker in the middle.
Yeah, it was great. It was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, like, and plus, like, the random factor too. Very exciting for not only the players but just also people watching on stream.
Yeah,
all right, what's he getting this time? Here we go. Oh,
Yeah. And then some of the secondaries are actually changed. Like grind them down is changed a little bit, where you score it your turn, and then your opponent, even if you get second turn, like if you have bottom of round, like in regular match play, if you have bottom of round and you killed more units than your enemy did, then you get points for grind them down. Whereas in Tempest of War, your opponent still gets their turn. Even if you do have bottom of turn on their turn, that's when it counts. So like there's like small differences comparatively to the GT mission pack, but like it just helps out so much. And one thing that I did learn off of the list that I brought was that I took one of them where I had to kill things in the shooting phase, and I had to kill 3 units, and I had to keep a tally every time I killed a unit in order to score my 5 points. And I realized I do not shoot well. I did not shoot well with that army. And so now I can take that into consideration if I wanted to go ahead and keep going with that army and then like refine it more, because I like that play style. But I can like refine it more now that I have that knowledge of, okay, I don't have that much shooting that's good into certain armies, right? And that's like knowledge that you can take later on.
Yeah, exactly. You can just fine tune it. But that's in a very like friendly, sort of like non-sweaty environment, if that makes sense. But you're still playing your more competitive, optimized book. It's just in a situation that's not like crazy optimized or designed for.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like the biggest point of it, right? Are there any other game modes that you enjoy, Skari, that you like to play like as a friendly, casual game with a toned down, overpowered army? I know that sounds like a lot, like a toned down, overpowered army.
Well, I like dipping into some of the old scenarios.
Oh, okay.
Like doing
interesting.
I'll do like a bunker assault mission every once in a while, or a planet strike mission, for anybody who remembers what those are, or a sabotage mission where there's a whole setup phase of the game where you're playing with your army trying to avoid enemy sentries who are trying to raise the alarm to your army, like getting close to plant an explosive in the middle of the table, essentially. And I find that playing like it helps me fine-tune my creative thinking when it comes to competitive play, because a lot of the times you can only ever get into weird scenarios when you're playing weird missions, and you learn how to like problem solve with your units that you have available, and then that translates sometimes into competitive play where you're in a pickle and there's a problem you need to solve, and you kind of like have precedent with some weird situations that you would have never seen elsewhere.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of brings us to like the main topic of this episode, which is just like using the knowledge that you're gaining off of playing underpowered, or softballing your armies a little bit, and playing these different modes in order to make yourself better at future events. Scar, do you want to explain that even more? I know that you just touched up on it, but like, is there more information that you can give off about that?
Yeah, you have to not be afraid, is what it is. Because a lot of people that meta chase specifically are on a timetable, if that makes sense. So they don't have they're very on crunch time to like build an army list, get it painted, take it to the next GT before it gets nerfed or whatever it is. Like there's a lot of, some people have that mentality. But for someone who wants to be a faction expert and who wants to really understand and learn how to play their faction well, like, for example, I've done with Drukhari for so many years, it's like I'm not perfect at playing the game, but I'm very creative at problem solving, right? And it's because I put myself into games or scenarios that aren't just the framework of matched play. I can come at it from different angles because I've played with my Drukhari in an ambush mission, like from the Cities of Death Codex or with Cities of Death book or whatever it is, where I've had to forcibly put half my army into reserve and try and beat up on some Iron Hands or whatever. So I only had like half my army to do the job that I needed. And it wasn't even the half that I wanted to use. It was the half that the mission told me I had to use. And, so I get good at using terrible units to do jobs that they might not be useful for in situations that are not ideal. Yeah. And then in match play, what happens? You play at a tournament, your opponent gets a good turn, blows up like your key piece, or something that you were really planning to do, and all of a sudden you're left with the dregs of your plan. And unless you have those creative, that creative thought process, you'll sort of like your fight or flight response will kick in, and then you'll get tilted, and then you won't problem solve. You'll just react, right? Yeah. And it's about problem solving. And I find that playing narrative, friendly games, and pushing yourself as a player with your faction specifically outside of that box translates very well to longevity with that faction, regardless of power of codex.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So with the different missions that you play, does it help you, something where you have the planet strike? That's the one where the entire enemy army has to drop down, right? That's how it is.
That's the premise. That's one of the missions. There's 6 different or 7 different missions in there.
Yeah. But even using that, do they have a 9-inch denial? They can't drop in within 9 inches?
Oh, there's so many.
There's so many different ones.
There's so many different styles.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, each new mission or campaign supplement or crusade missions that you play have different stratagems you can use. So you have to learn them on the fly and understand when to use these brand new stratagems that you can just use for this mission pack, or put priority, when you're playing Cities of Death, you can turn buildings into Medicare facilities or ammo dumps that give you rerolls and feel no pains, and you're trying to fight over these key locations on the map. But it also makes you flexible in digesting all this information on the fly and then applying it. So when it comes to the fast rate the GW releases rules, if you're used to just taking a brand new rule set or mission pack, reading it, and then playing a game with it, and then applying all the crazy stuff, it's a lot easier to kind of follow the crazy fast release that GW does sometimes.
Yeah. And it's also because you talked about people who are chasing the meta and going with an army to army, right? Buying whatever is hot at the moment and then quickly painting that up and then switching to another one. We saw that a little bit with Tau as of right now, with a lot of Tau players switching off of Tau and then going over to Harlequins and stuff. So that's definitely something that does happen. And when you are doing that meta chasing, not that it's bad if people like to do that. That's totally within your prerogative. Yeah. It's fine. And, a lot of those people can also be really good top players. There's a lot of top players that do that, and, that's totally fine. But for, your average Joe Schmo, that might not be the best option for you, right? I know that I keep saying, with League of Legends, but there's so many parallels to that game to, what's 40K, right? Is that... there's a reason why there's one-trick ponies for League of Legends, right? Is because you're always going to feel comfortable no matter what happens. And if you play all these different modes, it doesn't matter. You're like what Skari is saying, you're problem solving in your head how to deal with bad situations.
And eventually the meta, if you're like a meta chaser or
Yeah.
you want to do well, eventually the meta does a full circle and your army has its spot in the sun, like
Yeah.
Dark Eldar for like 8 months. And it's not always what it's cracked up to be, because then it's like, we just went over that. But
Yeah. But like, okay, so like, how do you deal with when you pull up to a table? Let's say that you're taking like an army that you really, really enjoy. Like you really enjoy Jakari. John P, you like AdMech, right? How do you deal with going up against somebody? Let's say that's just like a random person. And you're just playing against them, and you're playing like a really fun or a really fun version of your strong army. How do you deal with that? Because I know that there's a lot of negativity that can happen before the game even starts. Like, how do you make them feel better about the game?
you can go ahead and go you first if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say I think it's just best to, I don't know, just try to have a good time with the guy. Try to talk to them a little bit before the game. Just maybe just talk about just like maybe traffic, the event that you're at. Try to get their mind off the game just a little bit first. That way, you can get a little more personable with them. It's not just like, all right, I'm here to crush you with my strong army,
Yeah.
kind of feel. I actually played against a guy at LVO who was playing Speed Freak Orcs. And he was playing like a buggy list, flyers list, and he's been playing that kind of style list for like years. He started 40k with Speed Freaks, and like obviously it was a strong list at the time. And he kind of just prefaced it with like, "Oh yeah, this is the list I've been playing for years. I love orcs. I love Speed Freaks. This is just, I know it's pretty strong right now, but this is what I like." So and then I mean I felt like I knew what I was going against was strong, but I guess it made me feel a little better knowing that he wasn't like a meta chaser. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like this guy's here to have fun, and he's playing what he likes. He's not here to like compete super hard, be a sweater. Not that there's anything wrong with that, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that it's just very important that we all think there is nothing wrong with like meta chasing or anything like that. We don't want to get anybody upset or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
We're here to ruffle feathers. What are you talking about? Ruffle feathers.
It feels different when you're playing against someone that's like really passionate about what they're putting on the tabletop.
Yeah,
I guess the point that I was trying to get at.
A lot of times you can sense it, though. For example, like you can sense that right away. Like and it comes across in lots of different ways. Like if somebody's meta chasing, a lot of the times it might not be their collection, right? Or like they just kind of borrowed a bunch of stuff from different people, or kind of hodgepodged it together, and the color scheme doesn't match, or so there's a lot of stuff that, like, if you do want to play like a top meta army, like if you put the effort into it, you paint it, like it looks nice, like you're still doing sort of like, or you're getting it commissioned or whatever it is, like if you're putting that effort into the hobby aspect of it just as much as you are the crushing people with it, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, and if that's the way that your community plays around you, and you're all like one-upping each other all the time, and you love it, and that's like the way that everybody enjoys playing the game, all the power to you.
Yeah.
Personally, when a lot of the times, because the meta armies are so well known, whenever I took my Drukhari to a tournament during the height of the Drukhari meta, and I wasn't running any of the meta stuff, that was when people knew that, well, you either just play for fun or you know what you're doing, right? Because it was like I'd be running Void Raven bombers, or like Racewing jet fighters, or just like just random stuff.
Yeah, this madman, absolute crazy man here.
That's the guy I'm scared of right there.
Yeah, like
shows up with like completely off the wall stuff.
Yeah, like what are you talking about, Skari? What you're explaining is like a nightmare to me. I don't know. I can't do that, man.
And so they look at it and go, "Oh, you don't just meta chase." I'd be like, "No, I've been playing for a long time. Like I don't feel like I need to prove anything to anyone. So I'm just playing. Like my army's really strong right now, so I can literally run whatever I want.
Yeah,
and it's fantastic,
dude. I am so afraid of Chaos Space Marines. Like, I know that like a lot of people, they're obviously, like not the best army, but man, there are so many dedicated Chaos Space Marine players, and they know like everything about the books, and like it's scary going up against them because they're just like, this one has Mark of Slanesh, this one has this one has this one can do Veterans of the Long War. I'm gonna pop Veterans of the Long War. All right, I'm gonna use Endless Cacophony, and then they're like, all right, Demon Forge. I'm like, what is all this stuff? I don't understand. You're scaring me, man. I don't get
They
it.
got a stack of 5 codexes that they
Yeah.
pulled all these rules from. And you're like,
I'm not gonna read all that, man.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go what you say, dude.
It's because they haven't had the rules update in like 5 years. So
Yeah.
they know everything already,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Mhm,
but dude, when you go up against those people, it is terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying. I guess that we can kind of like end it off a little bit here. I think that we hit all of our topics here. We don't have to like beat a horse to the ground or anything like that. Just because, playing with overpowered armies helps your friends still stay friends with you. So that's always important. Don't just think that if you're gonna take a casual, you can't just say this is a casual army or this is a casual list, but then bring like all the top meta choices or like the most efficient units and then say it's a casual list, because then that it's not a casual list, right? Like it'll go like probably like 3-2 or something at an event or whatnot. But just keep in mind that there's other people in this hobby, and just be respectful to your opponent and have fun with them. And if they're your friend, you want them to have fun too. So just always have fun with your opponent, right? That's like the number one rule of Warhammer, right? That's in the book, right? That's like the number one rule. I'm pretty sure. Something like that.
Page 322, section
Yeah.
12, something like that.
Something like that. It's
on the sidebar, so you might miss it.
Yeah, it's in the rules appendix somewhere around there.
Rare rules.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about with this topic? Anything at all that you guys want to do before we end off?
No, I think that really goes through what we wanted to cover today. It just shows that you have to understand it's a social contract. If you're going to like LVO and you want to compete, you're going to be running into people who are competing as well, and they're running the most efficient like books and lists that you see out there, right? Like it's, if you want to play American football and you want to get into the NFL, like if you do tryouts, you're going to be trying out with people who want to do that for a living. You know what I mean? Like they're eating, breathing, drinking, like waking up and looking at and thinking about just football, right? Like that's what they're going to be doing. And it's the same in like any competitive sport. It's like, but if you're just going to hang out like at the Thanksgiving football game or whatever with like the family, like you all know that one person that takes it too far and gets like, it's like way too competitive. This is just for fun. Like cousin, cousin Bob, like, come on, bro. Like, this is not the NFL.
Yeah, it's like one of those.
Much better than this guy.
Yeah. Or like you're having like a board game night, and it's like, okay, we're playing charades, and someone just gets a little bit too competitive at charades, and it's like, we got to ban charades, guys. Can't do it. It's over.
So it happens with like pretty much any like game. We all know that, like from Scrabble to chess to charades, whatever it is. It's the same with 40K. Like you're going to be spending 2 to 3 hours rolling dice with a person. I much prefer rolling dice and having a good time, having some laughs, and like actually enjoying the time together than just someone being miserable the whole time. And then just being like, I could have spent this afternoon with my family or playing Civilization or whatever.
Yeah.
Losing your whole night to Civ.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's 4 days. I lost 4 days of my life last week.
And he didn't even finish the game. It's still going.
I finished one game.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's like what you were saying, if you do smash somebody and you're like trying not to, and you're trying to be a good friend and everything like that, but you still end up smashing them, just be like, hey man, I'll buy you a beer. I'm sorry, dude. Like, I don't mean that. Like, I value you as a friend. Just like, let's chill out. I'm sorry, dude. Just keep that in mind. Anyways, that's it for this episode of Chapter Tactics. If you guys liked it, make sure that you guys leave a thumbs up. If you guys have any ideas on how to go on with this type of method of playing with your armies that are strong, right? Leave a comment down below. Let us know what you guys think. And that's pretty much it. Skari, where can they find you, man?
Well, I just want to say a quick shout out to everybody who reached out after the Drukari episode that we did. So there's a lot of people that reached out. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed reading a lot of those comments and messages of folks who appreciated the topic. So thank you very much for that deep dive. It was really fun. But you can find me on YouTube. So you just type in Skadcast. That's SKAREDCAST. I'm a full-time content creator, so I do battle reports, and I work with mini wargaming and Art of War, and so I do a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and what's it called? I saw one of your streams where I think that someone on your team made an entire spreadsheet of win rates for a weekend.
Yeah. Well, it's for the Patreons. I do a Meta Monday analysis where I break down. But one of our Team Canada teammates is literally compiling all the data from all the GTs and making a color-coded spreadsheet of victory win rates.
Wow.
Faction versus faction.
Yeah.
And so I use, and I'm very happy he gives it to me every week. He sends it to me on Sundays or Monday mornings, and he's like, here, these are the numbers for this week. And ever since the beginning of the Nackmund GT pack, so it's been really cool to see just the way, you can see the differentials, point differentials of how much people are winning by on average, which I think is super important when you're trying to figure out how many points you need to score to win games. It's really fun.
Yeah, that's incredibly cool.
Yeah.
John P, where can they find you?
You can find me on Dice Check. We stream Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific and Saturdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. I haven't streamed recently on my personal channel. You can also find me twitch.tv/JoeNathanP. Usually do hobby streams or strategy gaming streams during the week. And also at your local McDonald's, probably in the playpen or playing Mario Party and those broken Nintendo things.
And they're always sticky. It's sticky.
Yeah.
There's some kid with little candy fingers is touching all over there. Just gross.
Yeah.
But you'll be there. So it's fine. So that's it for this episode. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
See you.